All right, Dan, we did it.
Heck yeah.
Eastman's Bow Hunting Podcast, Life of a Bow Hunter. We've got a title, we've got episodes, and we're finally releasing this thing, man. I'm stoked.
I am too. It's been a lot of fun. We've recorded 5 or 6 now, and you just never know where these conversations are going to go.
I think they keep getting better and better. I think we had a good chemistry to start, but the longer we do this, I think the better they get. Like, man, you got me all fired up for season.
No, exactly, and vice versa. You're really good at knowing how to get things out of me that I don't even know that I have. And I think that's why we feed so well off each other.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. Well, today's episode is a good one. So today, like, we sat down and we started talking about just our applications and filling up our season full of hunts. And we talked about moose, sheep, and goat, deer and elk, and extreme hunts, man. And then the conversation led down some different paths, but it was a good one.
It was. Like I said, you just never know where these are going to go. And such good information came out. And, it's fun, too. And it's fun to really branch out and talk about different subjects. And moose, sheep, and goat, like I'm super passionate about moose, sheep, and goat in Montana. I'm from Montana. And so, the things that we talked about there and what we see as an ideal sheep hunt or an ideal goat hunt. Good stuff.
And then I really enjoyed like the end of the podcast where we start getting into the mindset and being able to adapt and being able to build our skills in hunting different places. Like I really enjoyed where that conversation went.
Yeah. It's like what's up here is what makes you a good hunter or not. And how you can improve up here and how you think and how you process things in everyday life too, to also further you ahead as a hunter.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank today's sponsors for the show. I want to thank Matthews Archery. Man, I'm loving this new Phase 4. It is the quietest bow I've ever shot. I've actually shot a couple animals with it now, and I had a buddy that was 40 yards behind me when I shot one of these, and nobody knew that I shot because that bow is so silent, man. I got that thing shooting.
Yeah. We're so lucky to be able to shoot a bow and just technology that is so advanced, and it's just shocking every year how easy these bows are to tune and how efficient they are and to hunt with them. They're awesome.
Dude, and they hold a tune too.
Oh, yeah.
I can take last year's bow or 2 years ago bow and all the abuse I put on it, I can shoot it through paper and it's perfect. And the forgiving tune you can get out of these things, like I just have that Matthews, that Phase 4. It's shooting better than any bow I've ever owned. Like those arrows just find the center. And I just encourage guys, like, all these bow brands are good nowadays, but just shoot them and see if it's a good fit for you. And these Matthews are definitely a great fit for me and a great fit for you.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks to Matthews for their support of the podcast. I also want to thank Evolution Heads. So we've been using the Evolution hybrid and then also their fixed blade now for years. You really like it, don't you?
Yeah, the Jekyll and Hyde, great heads. I'm a believer in the hybrid, those bigger cuts. I have the power in my setup to penetrate and get those pass-throughs. And sometimes you don't get pass-throughs, but still, ultimately, if I can see that bull elk die within eyesight, that's what matters to me.
Yeah, they do a ton of damage, and I like how they're sharpened both ways. Like on that hybrid head, it's got a fixed blade on the front of it that I believe is 7/8 of an inch, but it's sharpened both front and back. So if you get that arrow in there and you don't get a pass through, it's still doing damage in there as that animal runs away. And I think that big 1 5/8 expandable cut, I think it makes for a more forgiving broadhead, because if you do make a marginal shot, you got a better chance at getting that animal just with the damage you do with them.
Absolutely. It's the best of both worlds, fixed and the mechanical. The mechanical are the blades are replaceable, and the fixed are too, but they don't fail. That's a big thing. They open every time. There's no failure, and they've proven to me over the last 10 years in that. Exactly. So.
Yeah, Dale Perry's done a heck of a job designing those heads. So thanks to those guys for their support as well. And man, over at Eastmans, we've been keeping busy. I did see that on the Beyond the Grid, you have your couple elk hunts coming up, man. I cannot wait to watch these hunts. Your Montana and your Wyoming, 2 giant bulls, man. I can't wait to see the vid on it.
Yep, two vastly different hunts, vastly different tactics, and we talk about that in this episode. Is you got to be able to adapt, and that's what both of these hunts are, just complete contrasts of each other. Backcountry, grizzly bears, intense, giant bulls, and then Montana, a little front country, private land, but hunting in a different way that I normally don't do, but believing in the process, and both results, giant bulls. It doesn't get any better.
Oh, absolutely. And I did see that one of my mule deer Nevada hunts from 2018 that was only on TV, we released that to be on the grid, so guys can go check out that show. And then I have a brand new one that's going to come up after yours. I believe in June or July. I saw it slated in there, and we'll make sure to let you know. But I'm really excited to see that new Nevada film come out, as it was just a super adventure with the backpack, extreme terrain and country, and then to make a good play on that mature buck was super cool. So that one will be coming out as well.
Yep, new season. Yeah, we kick off July 15th, and we'll be dropping episodes throughout the summer and fall as well. So be sure to check back. We have a lot of exciting stuff this year. Big bucks and big bulls. It was a great year in 2022.
Absolutely. Yeah, and make sure to check out our mule deer course. Dan and I, it's like everything we've learned in the last 25 years of hunting mule deer in all different habitats, all different seasons, different weapon types. We also had Guy Eastman stepped in for a lot of the rifle stuff, which that guy is so knowledgeable about mule deer. So I'm really proud at how that came out. I really think you can cut your learning curve with that course.
Yep, absolutely. If you're a veteran mule deer hunter, or if you're a novice mule deer hunter, you're going to take something away from it. And especially if you've drawn a tag this year, you need to make the most of it. They don't come around very often. Get a little help from the mule deer course. I guarantee you that you're going to take a lot away from it and put a lot of tools in the toolbox for your next hunt, for sure.
100%. And also check out everything we do. Check out the magazines, Eastman's Bowhunting Journal, Eastman's Hunting Journal. Check out Eastman's Tag Hub, which we use for a lot of our tag research to figure out which units we're going to apply for. There's so much information out there. And, man, Dan, I'd say we get into this episode.
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay. All right. Well, back together again for another podcast, Dan. It seems like we've been putting these together quite a bit here lately.
Heck yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, they are fun. Man, yesterday was sure a great conversation going over gear. I sure enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it's something that I was going to say I don't overlook it, but I kind of do overlook it. I don't think about it too much because I have my system dialed, but it is fun to talk about for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, wanted to get back on today. It's nice being over at the Eastmans office where I can sit down with you and we can record some of these live ones. So, yeah, what have you drawn so far?
Yeah, nothing. For me, that's been my luck the last few years. So
yeah, it's just getting tougher and tougher to get tags, isn't it?
It is. It is. I think the numbers are since 2017, 180% increase in applicants.
Wow.
So it's just the pools are big now.
It's gotten popular, hasn't it?
Very
Being
popular.
able to travel and for good reason. It's like we can go on these amazing adventures and you can go self-guided and do your research, and it's extremely difficult, but it's also like extremely rewarding. And so like I see why it's caught on, and then there's so much information out there nowadays, a lot of the information we put out and Tag Hub and with our mule deer course and really educating guys on how to travel and hunt, but that does mean that we get worse odds.
Yeah, exactly. Pros and cons to it.
Yeah,
but I think a red-blooded American male loves a good challenge and loves that taste of victory when you do taste it, and when it doesn't come easy, it's that much sweeter.
Man, it is. And it's like you could go pay for a guided hunt or access to private property where you are the only hunter in there, and then you're using that outfitter, that guide's knowledge to help give you a better chance at success. And so you could expect success on your first year going down there, or maybe a couple years doing it, where this the DIY hunting, the self-research, after you get proficient at your skills, you can expect to go someplace and have a good chance at success. With a bow, it's never guaranteed. I think even best case scenario, you're running 50% or 75% maybe on a good year. I don't know that we'll ever run 100%, but for other guys that are just learning how to hunt mule deer, hunt elk, or these special species, there may be a learning curve with it where it takes you 3 years of hard work and dedication to learn that unit, to be able to get proficient, to be able to expect to harvest one, or maybe even 5 years down the road. But the opportunity's out there.
It is. And, you don't want to think that there's animals on every piece of public land. There's a lot of animals in different units. It all varies, but just because you go out and hunt public land doesn't mean you're going to find an animal. There's a lot of public land that doesn't have anything.
Oh man.
And so, yeah, the learning curve, that's what makes it so challenging, is you have these vast tracts that don't have anything, and then you have jackpots of game, in other areas. And so, and then weather patterns and, seasonal changes can affect where they are. So it's a never ending moving target that you have to try to master, hence why you're never going to run 100%, 70% is pretty darn good.
Yeah. Man, you're spot on. There's so many variables, and then there's so many skills that go into it, and it's just being in good shape is just one facet of being a successful hunter. Being a good shot is just one facet of it. Like, you also have to be able to decipher units and be able to break down units. You have to be able to glass up game. You have to have the time to be able to go to times like a big one, the time to scout it, the time to hunt it, to expect to have success. So there's like so much that goes into it, and I think that's like part of the reason why both me and you love it, is like the challenge of it and the continuing to learn and adapt and evolve. But the truth of the matter is there's still great opportunity out there, and ultimately it comes down to your skill set as a bow hunter, not drawing a premium unit. Like, sure, I'd love to get a good tag as much as the next guy, but they don't come around that often. Like, I end up hunting a lot of low point units, a lot of general season units, and there's just still great places to hunt and great opportunity. You just have to put in the time and effort, and you can find that next honey hole. And not every place is discovered, as you stated, like a moving target. Spots are always changing. And so I have units that I hunt that are good for 2, 3, 5 years, where I'll consistently harvest animals out of there. And then something will change with the pressure, with the feed, and all of a sudden the animals are in a different area. But I just think there's no lack of these really good locations to hunt, because the hunting pressure is always changing, and hunting spots are always changing, and animals are where humans aren't. They're where the feed's good. And so, every year it seems to change a little bit, and so you have to kind of dial it in. But I still think there's like great hunting spots out there where you can get away from pressure and such.
Oh, absolutely. And that's part of what drives me too. And I was talking to a guy the other day. In the last 10 years of living in Wyoming, I haven't hunted elk in the same unit.
Wow.
Any of those years. Mm-hmm. It's been different because I love chasing new areas, or the thought of that new honey hole, perhaps. But it's still very calculated, where I'm bouncing around and what I'm doing. But yeah, there's a lot of great spots out there. Mm-hmm. There really is.
Well, and even inside a unit, like, I tend to hunt similar units for elk, and I explore for elk, but I find a good unit and then I'll stick with it a little bit. And as I stick with it a little bit, there's just no shortage of new country to find. Even inside my home unit that I've been hunting for 25 years, I killed my bull in a different range last year in a different spot I had never hunted. And so just continuing to explore and find new places, and it takes like this explorer's mindset. Like, you do strike out with elk and with mule deer. I'll look on a map, or I'll find a spot that I want to go check out, and I'll hike back in there, and there just isn't the sign, isn't the deer. I can cross that spot off my list, and then I continue to look. But even these units I know, I'm always constantly exploring, and I think you could do that for a lifetime and still not touch every basin, every bowl, every drainage that there is inside a unit. So there's always room to explore new country.
Absolutely, and especially in some of that Montana country, there's some big units in there, and you get a lot of country. You could spend a lifetime in just a couple of units for sure. So yeah, no, it's never-ending fun.
Well, that's That's kind of the trick, is to fill up our season. And we're fortunate living out west, me being a resident of Montana, you being a resident of Wyoming, that we know we've got a pretty good chances. I'm pretty much guaranteed my elk tag, my deer tag, antelope's a real good chance for me, my bear tag. And so then I can kind of build my season around those tags. And you, similarly, like you know you've got a pretty good chance at your elk tag and your deer tag in Wyoming, and then you'll build your season around that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's you always have your core, your resident status tags that you can get. Antelope, a little more difficult, if you can imagine that. We had a 500,000 antelope. I don't know, after this winter, it's definitely bleak out there, especially in the southern half of the state. But they don't give away antelope tags very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very generously in Wyoming to residents. They're pretty protected. I think in the 10 years that I've lived here, I've drawn an antelope tag 2 times.
Wow.
In 10 years.
Oh, I thought you had more antelope tags than that.
No. 2 times.
So you'll go up to Montana sometimes and hunt them then too?
Yeah, and I haven't drawn that for 3 years.
Wow.
Just, too many applicants. It's just, I have 20% chance, to draw these tags. And if I have a 20 to 30 to 40% chance, I usually don't draw those tags. With that, I don't draw tags. But it's fine. I mean, antelope are fun, and I grew up hunting them. And so they're good to, get your feet wet for the season, hunting in August or something each year. But it's like, is what it is, and keep building points in Montana, and I'll draw one of these days. And in Wyoming, there's no points, and so it's just a straight up crapshoot.
Mm-hmm. It comes down to your luck.
It does. It comes down to your luck, and you can. And don't get me wrong, I could go hunt second choice units and go hunt an antelope if I really wanted to. Mm-hmm. But deer, elk, a little more fun, I think, and usually August is busy of fishing and other hunts, and I haven't drawn an early season mule deer tag in a long time either, out of state. Mm-hmm. Like you said, especially these out of state tags, they can be hard to come by. These controlled hunts, these limited entry hunts, I don't care where you're at. It's once a decade for me is kind of where I've been rolling on, anything has some, hard to draw status to it. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, it's impressive, though. You fill up your season each and every year with a bunch of hunts and a bunch of successes, and so you do really good. But you have to be creative, and you kind of have to build your own application strategy. And I know each and every year I fill up my season, and I try to kind of rotate some of these states where I know that I'm going to draw a tag. So this year will be I'm hoping anyways. You never know until the tag shows up in the mail, but I think I'm going to do like a Utah early season general tag. I should have enough points to draw that. And I've jumped around in different general units, and I just haven't found the right fit for me. And so I'm trying out a new one again this year. But because of that, I'm not going to be as aggressive in Nevada. I'm due for a tag in Colorado, but I'm going to wait so I can save that for next year. I'm getting close in Wyoming again, and so I'll wait a year or two, or find a buddy with a bunch of points that wants to put in or something, but I try to kind of space it out throughout the years. And then I do apply for just some long shots too, that it's just like, I just hope to draw one of these really good elk or mule deer tags. And I also picked up I have a late season mule deer tag, so I'm stoked at that one, that I know I have that on top of the Montana tag. So yeah, my season's starting to fill up. I could just take getting lucky on one of these tags, but it is getting tougher and tougher. And I think it's just about, when you draw these tags, is really spending the time and effort inside that unit, whether it's scouting or hunting. I can set my sights a little bit higher and really focus on, I've killed enough deer and elk where it's like, I don't need to just kill one to have a successful hunt. Like, I want to experience the entirety of the hunt and the opportunity that I have to go in this different state and hunt a good unit for, whether it's elk or deer, or like what I'd really like to draw is a sheep tag. But man, those are getting tough to come by.
Oh man. Yeah. The moose, sheep, and goat, of course, the big 3 trophy species. It's definitely once in a lifetime. I mean, it's cliche because they are that hard to draw. Mm-hmm.
Have you drawn one before?
Never. Mm-hmm. Never. No, I've growing up in Montana, applying every year, and I have 22 moose points in Montana. I'm a non-resident now, so non-residents aren't allocated a ton of tags. But there's other opportunities out there that I don't chase because, like Idaho, for example, you can apply for a moose or a sheep or a goat tag, but if you apply for one of those species, you can't apply for elk or deer or antelope.
Mm-hmm.
And so it comes down to like how bad you want to chase a species, I guess. I did kill a moose in British Columbia.
I was going to
about
mention
6
that.
years ago.
With your bow. Yeah, it was a great moose.
And that was, that hunt was basically everything that I hoped and dreamt a moose hunt to be when I first encountered a moose when I was 13 years old elk hunting with a bow in my hand, and this giant bull up the South Fork of the Flathead comes stomping in to 10 yards. And I was like, ever since that moment of being 13, I was like, I want to hunt one of these with a bow someday. And yeah, that British Columbia moose hunt, I mean, that was everything that I hoped a moose hunt would be, a standoff at 14 yards looking at each other for 45 seconds when I was at full draw and shot him on the spin. And I mean, that's as good as it gets. And so, I would love to obviously draw a moose tag. I apply in the lower 48, of course, but sheep and goat and moose, it's like kind of take them when you can get them, if you do get them, and still focus on deer and elk. Because like you said, you still want to have a good variety of, those long shot tags, yes, but some generals or some tags that take 1 or 2 points, so you do have some hunts to go on. And there's an art to it, and it's it takes a lot of understanding and knowledge and planning, of course, with your application strategy. But yeah, the moose, sheep, and goat, if I can draw one of those in my lifetime, fantastic. I'm just happy enough to go on a hunt with buddies. And that's what ends up being half of my season anyway, is whether it's coworkers or, Guy drew a moose tag this year. My brother drew a few years ago. He drew a great elk tag in Montana a few years ago. And so I fill up my seasons with, buddies and family that draw tags as well. And so that's what it's all about to me, is just being on those hunts, whether I'm the trigger man or not. It's no big deal. So
yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I am yet to be included in a sheep hunt. When I was younger, I thought, hey man, I want to be a sheep hunter because they live in the most extreme terrain, and they do. I think it's a special experience to be able to hunt a sheep, and especially in the rough, rugged terrain like in the lower 48 or Alaska, Canada. Like, I think it's really special. It's just I realized pretty quick that it was out of my tax bracket and that I wasn't that lucky at drawing tags, and so focused on mule deer and elk, which really to me is some of the funnest hunts around. But it is so exciting to get one of those opportunities. Like I had the moose tag last year for a Shiras, and I have hunted moose up in Alaska too. I did a big float trip and able to see bulls up in there and chase them around with my bow. I wasn't able to harvest one, but I do want to go back and use the knowledge that I've gained to go drift that river system again, because we did see 10 bulls and I got some stalks on bulls and it was good hunting. But yeah, it's a rare experience. I'd love to draw a sheep tag, and I do get really aggressive with my apps as I apply in Idaho, like you're talking, pick your species, and they have big, vast backcountry in and through there, and so I apply for sheep there. And really, there's some good opportunities around. It's Nevada allows me to apply for a California bighorn and a desert bighorn. Down in New Mexico, I applied and blanked down there. Colorado has an archery-only tag. I applied there, blanked again this year. But, eventually you just need like some luck on your side. And Montana is probably my best bet, being a resident, and I've drawn the goat and I've drawn the moose. So I've had really good luck being able to experience those. But that sheep tag's the toughest one to draw there. But as a resident, I have as good or better odds there than any place else in the lower 48. And I do hold, like you, like 22 points for sheep or something. And so eventually I'll just get really lucky and they'll pull my name and I'll get that experience and make the most out of it. But it is pretty special. I like how you hunt with buddies and coworkers and things to get that experience. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And like, Guy had a friend that his nephew drew a sheep tag in the breaks about 5 years ago, I think. And so I went on that hunt with him. And I've been on a couple sheep hunts. And
you videoed that one?
I videoed that one.
Yeah, I
too,
remember that one.
Yeah, and that's fun. It was a great time. And
was he on the south side or the north side?
South side.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's, the breaks is a different realm. It's a different world. It's a very unique sheep habitat, of course, compared to, when you think of a Rocky Mountain bighorn, you think of maybe some rugged country and some high peaks, but it's the opposite there in the breaks. And so it's definitely a cool experience. And obviously, a break sheep tag is arguably the most coveted tag in the lower 48, I would say, especially, in the past with giant 190 plus rams being killed out of there. It sounds like it's declined a little bit the last several years, but it's for me personally, it's like if I'm going to hunt moose, sheep, or goat, it's a once in a lifetime experience for me. And I want to do it on my terms. I want to hunt a unit exactly the way that I dreamt it up and the type of country that I just idealize, or picture as an ideal hunt, like sheep hunting, for example. I'm not like a breaks guy to like go shoot one for myself there. It's just not what I picture as an ideal sheep hunting experience with, the rugged mountains and some elevation that, you're hitting those mountains hard, and, the vast beauty. And they're beautiful in their own way, the breaks are, but it's just that hunt's not for me. That's not a hunt that I would choose. And it's so competitive in the breaks. That's a turn off for me too. It's very competitive. Call it sheep wars, up there. You hear stories with the guides and the outfitters up there, and it's very, very, very competitive. And that takes the fun out of it for me a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so, when I think of a sheep hunt, I think of, like the Rocky Mountain front, or, Paradise Valley, or even like Plains, Montana, when, hunting above the Clarks Fork River. Some of the classic sheep hunting in western Montana was what I picture. And so those are the tags that I go for. And they're all coveted areas and whatnot. But and then moving on to like a goat, my biggest fear with a goat is hunting an area where it's not possible to get it done with a bow. I mean, I've heard stories that like these goats are just inaccessible with a bow. And so it's like, man, so over the years of talking to guys and talking to hunters and, finding places that, the country isn't too rugged to get it done with a bow are the types of units that I look to apply for. So I guess the short of it is I want a specific experience out of my moose, sheep, or goat hunt, especially in Montana, because that's where I've invested the most amount of points and time and money in. I want it to be exactly the way I want it to be. I don't want to settle for like a lesser unit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
It makes sense. Yeah, I completely respect that. And actually, as you state it, I tend to agree with it. Like, I think that's the right way to go about it. I have and do apply for those breaks because they're the biggest they are in the world, and I do love that canyon coulee country. And I think some of those draws and ravines get really steep in those clay banks, and I think it'd be a fun experience to drift down in a boat and then hike up those canyons day in, day out. But as you state that, I mean, you're right. If you're going to hunt a Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, it should be done in a big mountain hunt, backpack, 10-day, 14-day experience. So I tend to agree with you when you state that. But it's also just like you're talking about goats, and that hasn't really scared me away of units and goats. The one I harvested mine in was like the Absaroka Beartooth, just a gnarly big range. And, it did start to get a little spooky as it started to snow and started to get a little bit slicker on the mountains, but I was able to get it done in that unit, and it was this great experience. I tend to agree with you with the rams. Like, it would be fun to hunt them on that Rocky Mountain front or like a classic bighorn sheep mountain range. So I think I may change my apps a bit after that, but it's also like, as I break it down with a bow, like I am bow only for any species I ever draw. There is no other weapon for me, as that's the way I want to do it. And so the breaks has a better population of them where I can expect to get stalks and get plays and see them, where that Rocky Mountain front, that thing is so big. That country is so gigantic that you can go around and walk 50 miles and not see a sheep in that country.
Yep.
You can definitely dial it in by talking to the biologist. You're in for the ultimate challenge, which I think is special too. And I think after you describing it to me, I think you're right, and I tend to agree with you. But I've always looked at it as I'm going to kill it with my bow, and so it's going to be the only ram tag I may ever draw. I want to make sure that I have a good chance at filling that tag. And also, part of the experience for me is in Montana, you get to hunt them in the later season.
Yep.
Well, in these big mountain ranges, that later season is going to be a lot tougher where, if you drew that breaks tag, you're going to get to go experience the sheep rut and see rams that are rutting ewes and get plays on them and chances almost like hunting a rutting mule deer in there. And so, that's always kind of drawn me in too. But it is personal preference and whatever you're looking for out of the hunt, and we're both just dreaming until we actually see a tag come through.
Exactly. And like they say, sheep hunters are romantics. You build in your mind what you would just love to do or what you would want to experience on a sheep hunt, and make it happen if you can. And that's all it is. And like you said with the breaks, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's laid out for bow hunting. The breaks are awesome. I mean, to kill a ram with your bow, it doesn't get any easier, but it doesn't get any more ideal to set yourself up to harvest a ram with a bow. And so there's that appeal to it. And in some of this more rugged country, you may, get cliffed out. You could have trouble killing one with a bow because of the topography. Mm-hmm. But that's what we have on our side ultimately is the rut. You have the month of November, and those rams come down on those slopes, and they rut in a little bit easier country, and so you can get on them. But we're romantics when it comes to sheep hunting. Sheep hunters are romantics, and it's make it what you want it to be ultimately. Mm-hmm. and don't settle for anything less. Mm-hmm. So.
I love those extreme bow hunts. Like, they just require more training, more planning. Like, the challenge, it just ups the degree of difficulty. When you have a goat tag, you're training so hard, because that you're going to have to go in these rough, rugged mountains. And I think that's part of the fun and part of the reason why I fell in love with, like, high country mule deer is, it's these mule deer, you can get tags for it, and you get to hunt them in the most extreme environment up there. Like, that environment just breaks bow hunters up and through there. There's little water, and you have to travel this extreme country and be able to, most of these units you can't day hunt. You have to backpack into, which is like the purest form of hunting when you carry everything on your back. And in mule deer too, it's like, I think it'll be a challenge to hunt a sheep and to sneak up on a sheep, but I think mule deer's instincts are so keen, and especially when they get to those larger age classes and size, like trying to sneak within a stone's throw of a mature mule deer above 12,000 feet or above 10,000 feet is this enormous feat. And I think I love like that challenge of doing that, or a goat hunt, or like tar in New Zealand, or I love these really extreme environments and extreme hunts. And the mule deer is something where, even though we talk about tags getting tougher and tougher, you can expect to draw a high country mule deer tag and go get that experience. Now, they're not easy, and it may take you a few years to harvest one, and to harvest a trophy one, it may take you a lifetime, but that's part of the beauty of it. That's why I like those hunts so much.
Yep. And like you said, if you're cutting your teeth, or if you're hunting, mule deer in the high country year after year, in my opinion, that's about as hard and rugged of a hunt that you can do in the lower 48. Mm-hmm. For an animal that is so wily, that's so switched on in such rugged country, if you can get her done in the high country on mule deer in the lower 48, you can get it done on a goat, on a sheep, on a moose, anything else in the world, mm-hmm. in my opinion.
Yep, spot on.
And the one thing I noticed that I really had a ball last year hunting mouflon with a bow is their eyesight. I feel like, mouflon, they're incredibly switched on, and then you factor in that they're hunted all the time, and so they're always looking around, and their eyesight is insane. I think you've experienced the same, and they really challenge you to a level that it makes deer and elk hunting seem a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, you're spot on. Well, and we just don't get that many opportunities to hunt sheep, and so when we get to hunt mouflon sheep is like one of those experiences that you can make happen. The other one's like an aoudad sheep, which I still want to do. I haven't done. I had a hunt put together like during COVID and got canceled. and I do apply in New Mexico every year. Like I'd love to hunt those spots down there, but those are our chance for some sheep hunts. And there's all these opportunities out there. Like heck, you can head to Arizona on over the counter tag and go hunt Coues deer, which are going to be extremely challenging, and
Oh,
extremely tough to glass, extremely tough to stock up on. I think success odds with a bow are like 2 or 3% for those things, so they're really difficult. And the Mouflon's another like special experience. Like in those
yeah.
lava rock canyons in there, they've just adapted perfectly to that habitat in Hawaii. And those lava rock canyons are super gnarly. Like you get cliffed out pretty easy in those things, and you have to be careful and mind your p's and q's. And then there's a lot of heat to contend with and deal with there too. And so it's another one of those real extreme hunts. And like you said, their senses, their eyesight is probably the best eyesight I've ever seen. It might even trump an antelope's eyesight. Like I can usually animals pick up on movement far better than a camel pattern, but they can see me crouched next to a rock and walk up and they just pick me out. Like their eyesight is so good, and they're like a smaller size sheep, so they're a small target, and they are a sheep, so they have like a curl to their horns. And I tell you, it's been like a pretty special experience to be able to go out there and hunt those things the couple times I have. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, and that brings up a good point with the aoudad, that they're similar. I hunted them a few years ago, about 6 years ago, I think, in Texas, and same thing. They have this ability to pick you out even if you are motionless. If you're visible, they're probably going to see you, and that's what I noticed too on these mouflon. And so it's like you have to go like full up ninja if you get within 100 yards, and you got to be like on your belly and like just looking through blades of grass. I remember just crawling in that Hawaiian heat and just like inchworming my way closer up to the edge, because if you think you're gonna just sneak up to the edge and like peek your head over, they're gonna see you. That was my experience. And so you had to just be as concealed as you possibly could. And aoudad are the same way. They just pick you out. And aoudad, I think, might even be harder because, well, where I was at, the groups were like 30 to 80 animals.
Wow.
So then you have all those eyeballs too on top of a really keen animal. It's like serious challenge.
Well, and see, that's why I think you have so much success with your bow. Is I think all these species in different habitats and taking on these different adventures, and we're not successful every time, but you get there, and then you got to start problem solving, and you get busted or you get seen or you get. And so hunting these different species in different habitats like sharpens all your skill sets, and then it gives you a great chance when you get into an elk season or when you get into a deer season that you can use that experience. And the same thing for deer and elk, hunting those in different habitats. Like those mule deer, we talked about high country, but also you can hunt them early season, you can hunt them during the rut, you can hunt them in the foothills in the desert. And we have like all that in our mule deer course is both our combined knowledge of 25 years of hunting mule deer in all these different habitats and all these different adventures you can do for them. And we have it laid out in that course in a video format. And I mean, it's honestly everything we know about hunting mule deer.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of information in there, and I think you nailed it. I mean, that's what it's about. Is like, yeah, you can focus on hunting mule deer in one area and get it dialed, but once you start branching out and you're challenging yourself to different terrain and different states and hunting pressure, the list goes on and on and on. That's what really separates the men from the boys. And that's what we really focused on in the mule deer course is, we want you to be separated from, the boys. And that experience and how we laid it out, we fast tracked that for you. And so, yeah, no, we revealed a lot of secrets and put a ton of knowledge out there, and it's exciting. It really is exciting.
You cut the learning curve by years, stuff
Yeah.
that's taken us a lifetime to learn, and it's all, formatted in that where you walk through the course, whether it's a couple weeks or a month or a couple months to walk through it, and you can cut that learning curve and start applying it to your own hunting. And yeah, it's hunting the West. It's not just about drawing a good tag. You can draw a really good tag, but if you don't have the skill sets to get it done, even these sought after, like I've drawn some pretty decent tags at 5% draw odds, 2% draw odds, but if you haven't built your skill set and worked on your skill set, you still can't expect to go in these really good units and be able to harvest a trophy in there. And my moose was the perfect example last year. It was 30 days of hunting that moose. But if I didn't have all the hunting experience that I do, all the knowledge, all the different habitats, and being able to keep my mental fortitude to keep going day in and day out, here I would have got this awesome opportunity to hunt a Shiras moose and not filled out with my bow, And so really it's this combination of all this bow hunting experience for me coming to fruition when I have a good tag and then being able to capitalize on it. But it's not just having a good tag. It's building your skill sets and then applying that when you do get a good tag or in the lower points units. Like there's trophy bucks and bulls in low point and general units all throughout the United States. It's all about showing up to the trailhead with like a good skill set.
Yep. That's huge. And going back to the those units that were like a moose tag or a 5% chance to draw a tag, if you draw a tag like that, there's going to be that pressure, right? That added pressure that you have that you might not have on like a general tag or a tag that's easy to get. This could be your one shot, and so you have that pressure and you don't have that skill set. That's a recipe for disaster. Mm-hmm. And so, like, how did you handle, because I know you felt the pressure with your moose tag. You're hunting 30 days. You want to get it done with your bow. How did you handle the pressure and the stress of just holding a moose tag? Mm-hmm. I mean,
I kind of viewed it as an opportunity, and I viewed it as that I want to get the most out of the experience. And if I didn't harvest one, that was okay. I just wanted to leave it all out on the field. And for me, I didn't want to shoot a bullwinkle. Like I wanted to shoot a good representation of a Shiras moose. And I had a moose that I thought was a shooter down in the willow bottoms, and I made a play down and around, and he heard me and he spooked out, and I saw him going over the hill and I saw his paddles. And so I tracked that moose for an entire day, and I finally caught up with him in the afternoon, and he was bedded 20 yards in front of me, and he wasn't the one. He had like 5 or 6 points either side, and it's just I looked at him, and it was not one that I was going to be happy with, and so I walked away from him. And I was okay eating my tag on that. So to answer your question, I just wanted to give it absolute full effort day in, day out, and let the cards fall where they do. But I have so much confidence in my skills with a bow and arrow and my skills to be able to locate one and make it happen that I just had this inner belief that if I continue to put forth effort, I will get my chance at one. And that's what ended up happening. 30 days in, I had seen 40 moose. And I was just making a still hunt up a canyon I had scouted that had a bunch of moose sign. And I made a hard rule that I wasn't going to shoot a moose more than a mile away from the road because I might be solo packing them out. So here I am 2 miles from the road.
Yep.
And so I'm 2 miles and I'm getting ready to turn around, and I just kind of climb this hill and get this elevation, and I spot a moose down there, and it's like, oh, there's one. I throw up my binos, and it's a cow, and it's getting towards post rut. I'll just keep climbing a little bit higher and, a little bit discouraged. It's another cow, and I've seen a lot of cows and small bulls and climbed a little bit higher and then able to spot that bull. And then the stalk on that bull, moose aren't known as being the spookiest animals out there. I think a lot of times you could almost walk up with a bow, but now that I've finally found a shooter bull, it's like, I don't want to mess this up. And so I had to stalk him like an antelope and stalk him through about a foot and a half of snow and through this marshy bottom where my bottom of my legs just got soaking wet, but it's just painstakingly slow step by step to make sure I didn't spook him out of there, and then finally put a perfect arrow in that bull. So it came together. So I felt the stress that I had to go, that I had to make the time, that I had to every free evening, every free day, I had to be hunting moose. So that's where some of my stress came in. But as far as harvesting one or killing one, like I just didn't put too much on my shoulders, just full effort. And I just had this belief that I've got enough time, an opportunity will present itself.
Yep. Two big takeaways from that is time. Got to have the time, right? You can't expect huge results out of 4 days of hunting. And then believing in yourself and believing in the process. Those are the two big things. And that's what I try to focus on too. If I ever have a coveted tag or any hunt, I mean, yeah, there's going to be that pressure, but if you have the time and you believe in yourself and you believe in the process, you're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be fine. And setting realistic expectations like you also did.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't say like, well, no, it's a 45-inch bull or nothing. You know, you didn't do that to yourself. And so a lot of guys will put pressure on, on themselves with too high of expectations for a unit. And that can be a kiss of death too.
Mm-hmm. Sure can.
And so, yeah, very important. You go into a hunt like that with realistic expectations, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think that's the key. But, really all these hunts is this preparation for, this planning for, and it's a big deal to all of us. It may be the 1 week we have off a year, the one chance we get to go hunt elk or whatever the case is. So, there's always stress and pressure there, and it's never going to be 100% or a guarantee. And so, I think it's just working hard on those skill sets. It's working hard on, all these different facets and doing everything you can do leading up to a hunt, whether that's scouting, the e-scouting, the learning the road systems, learning the mountain ranges, finding animals or sign in there. Like all that work that you can do prior to the hunt pays off during the hunt. And same thing with this moose is I had 30 days of hunting, but I also had 10 days of scouting in before I got to the hunt. So I had likely spots to go look. And I started to narrow it down and started to really see consistent moose throughout doing that. But I think it's, when we draw a tag, it's just putting this effort in to make sure we're as prepared as we can be, and then letting the cards fall where they do, just giving it our best. And, in a lot of these hunts too, there are opportunities to go back. Like sometimes I'll draw these mule deer tags and I'll plan my 7-day hunt or my 10-day hunt, but we're looking at a buck that you harvested in a special unit, and I hunted that unit like a few years later. And I know I went and gave it 7-8 days in there and did not harvest a buck. But I made the time. I went back. I reset. It's a long drive for me. It's 6-7 hours. But I went home. I reset. The season was still open. And I made another trip back and then able to harvest a nice buck in there. And so, it isn't always a one and done. Like sometimes you can go back and continue to hunt. Like those Montana seasons, they'll run for 6 weeks. And so kind of my biggest advantage for elk, it'd be tough for me to go kill a trophy-sized bull in 5-6 days over there. But my advantage is that I can keep going back every weekend or do multiple 3 or 4 day hunts surrounding those weekends. And that's really like a huge key to my success, is just like having that time.
Yeah, that's a very good tip in Western hunting, because I've done that several times where I plan my season accordingly, and I always have that in the back of my mind. If I can hunt, this tag on these dates, if something goes wrong or weather or whatever, I can slip away a couple weeks later and get back over there. And I've done that a few times and been on hunts where that's happened, and the hunting is completely different. You may pound it for a week and be like, man, this is kind of a bummer tag, or you're not seeing the animals, or maybe it's hot and that there's just no movement. And then you come back 3 weeks later and the weather's changed and you're just covered up in elk or something like that. I've experienced that a few times.
Well, you did that on your special Montana deer tag a couple years ago as well.
Yep.
Is that you had a special tag and you went over there for a week and you were a touch early on it and didn't find deer, and then planned to go back, and then when you went back you arrowed that great buck that you found over there. It had just changed, and you made time for another trip down there and able to get it done. And we talked a couple podcasts back about timing, how timing is such a key element to success. And as hard as we plan and as much knowledge as we've gained over the years, we don't always get it right. And so sometimes it is a return trip. Or like that moose, I thought the rut was going to be more September 15th to October 1st, and there was no rut action. I didn't even see a moose for the first 7 days. Like it was tough. They were in their summer habitat, their summer range. I thought that was going to be good. That's when I had planned my time to hunt them, and then I couldn't find one. And the rut, it ended up being October 1st to October 15th was the money time frame, But if I had only planned that first 15 days, I doubt I would have killed one.
Yeah, that's huge. Timing makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. But it'll be fun. Our season's starting to fill up. You got that moose hunt to go on with Guy, and then we've got some more drawings coming up here. So maybe we'll get lucky. And it is just about like filling up your season full of adventures. You wait all year for it. You just want to have a couple tags in your pocket, even if they are easy to draw or a
Yep.
general season. So, like these elk tags that you get in Wyoming, you talked about hunting different units. What's some of the I know you've timed these elk hunts, like you've just killed some great bulls here, and sometimes you're hunting them way early, like when they're first starting pre-rut. Other times you're peak rut, and then I know like I hunt them a lot in October and post-rut and do well. I killed a great bull a couple years ago in post-rut. So like, what kind of effort or what's your strategy like around these elk hunts and these new units? How do you learn them? How do you get a game plan together? And then how much do you have to adjust on the fly?
Yeah. So when I go to a new unit, or if I'm hunting general, or if I draw a limited entry tag, I'll have some bit of intel on that area, and that may be a buddy that's hunted it, or that may be just boots on the ground. I've shed hunted it. I've spent time in the summer. I've looked for sign or whatever, or talked to a biologist. Having some sort of intel before I commit to just going in someplace blind. And then once I have that, then just being flexible and trying to understand elk movement before you go in there by talking to people, or talking to biologists. Some of these units and the statistics can be misleading too. For example, one of these general units in Wyoming, I looked at it, and during the general season, it was like a 60% success rate. And that's crazy. That's crazy high. Like 30% success rate on elk is really good. Really good.
Are you talking the general season? Are you talking
Yes.
with a rifle then? Or?
Yes. And
Yeah,
so
okay.
here's the kicker. The general season statistics, there's no like archery specific statistic. It's general rifle season. And so, I can look at this area and be like, okay, well, man, this general season, 60% success, it's going to be off the Richter in there for bow hunting, for elk. You go in there in September, there's nothing. There's not an elk. It's like, this is terrible. But what happens is it's more of a migrational zone where elk move through, and it just happens to be during the general rifle season. So those elk just get pounded with rifles. But during bow season, it's a no man's land. There's no elk there. And so I've been burned like that before, going into places just by looking at stats and maybe not talking to enough people. So I've got to be flexible and be able to completely pick up and abandon this spot and go find a totally new place to hunt. And I've done that before too. So, and we talked about this on our previous episode too. If you guys haven't listened, make sure you listen to our gear episode. That's why it's so important to be able to be mobile, to be able to move your camp. Don't put all your eggs in one basket in one spot, because if you show up and there's crickets, you got to be able to pick up and move in a timely fashion, not like pick up 2 days later, or waste all this time, especially if you're on a schedule, that you got to be able to pick up quick and move, and have a plan A, have a plan B, a C, D, E, F, all the way down the line, and exhaust all those plans, and have those plans so they logistically make sense too. So you can travel from one to the other, and then hit this one, and then hit this one. And you always have those spots that you've hunted in the past that you can hit as like a backup spot. And so all this factoring in is very important on to why I'm successful. And 10 years, 10 bulls, and in all new units. I mean, that's a little crazy, because like a smart guy would just hunt the same unit every year once they find good hunting. That's what you do. But like I say, it's what you want out of a hunt, what really drives you. And I love new country. I love exploring. I'm always looking for that next honey hole. But yeah, and then along the way, kind of further answering your question, along the way on my journey as an elk hunter, I'm still taking notes. I'm still, observing what are elk doing this time of year in this area, or this region, or this mountain range, and what are they doing this time of year in this region or mountain range. And I'll take all that information from over the years, and I log it. I keep a journal, and I factor that in when I go to plan my fall out. So for example, like if I have a tag, or I'm going to hunt some high country stuff, some 8,000 foot plus stuff, I need to know that there's summer range nearby. And, I like to hunt staging areas. And if I want to kill a big bull, I like to hunt them early before they're cowed up, before they're locked in with 80 cows. Because once they're herded up, then man, good luck. It just became a lot harder to kill that herd bull, that big bull. But you have that window early season when they're kind of coming off their summer zone, their summer range. They rub their velvet. They get wound up. They're fired up. They get territorial too, I found. And I've had some of the best calling and bugling action, the first 10 days of September. And then there'll be a lull, and then I'll have some good action later, and maybe even to October as well. But it's timing. It's with elk. I mean, one day you could have a big 350 bull that has 50 cows. The next day it could be solo, and you could call it in with a calf call, a lost calf, like nothing, like taking a candy from a baby. But when they're with those cows, it's a little bit more difficult, as you know. So it's timing. And so that's ultimately too, I always plan multiple days on my hunt, because if I have 3 slow days, I'm just banking on the probability that I'm going to have, catch a bull on the right day and kill him. And that's usually how it plays out. You're catching that bull on the right day when he's most susceptible, being able to see that, being able to pick up on that, and then either stalking on them or call them in. And so, yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot to it that you don't really think about until you write it all down on paper.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so impressive. Like 10 bulls in 10 years from 10 different units. It's so impressive. And like you said the smarter hunter might find a good unit and hunt it over and over. And there is something to learning a good elk area, but in that same breath, like now you built your skill set as being able to go into these new units and figure them out and be successful in them. So therefore, that's where your skills lie, where now you can go anywhere and go kill an elk and adapt to that mountain range and adapt to that habitat. And I think one of my greatest attributes, or I'll say our greatest attributes, is our ability to adapt. Like you can lay out the best plans for a season or for a hunt. It very rarely goes as you've written the script. It's just like you get there and there's more hunting pressure, or the elk aren't there. Like our ability to adapt on a hunt and to figure out where the animals are and to create an opportunity, like that's really the skill set. Like that's the special part of it, is being able to adapt what you're seeing in real time and being able to know that now I need to move, and to continue to theorize. You mentioned your game plans of having A, B, C, D, but being able to theorize, okay, the elk aren't here. What are the elk doing? Where have I seen sign? Where have I seen elk? Okay, well, I'm seeing them in these bottoms. They're definitely keying into these bottoms, but it's like nothing's written in stone, and it is this moving target. And so when you're on a hunt, you have to just continually theorize and then adapt to what you're seeing. And if you're not finding deer, then you're looking for other basins that are facing other hillsides, or continuing to move country until you can locate a deer. But your ability to adapt, like your ability to adapt, evolve, and overcome. Like you just have to adapt to these hunts, and you can lay the best laid plans out there. It's very rarely going to go to your plan. And so what you're going to have to do is get there, assess what's happening, adapt your tactics to try to key in. And the key to killing these elk, or to killing these mule deer or sheep, moose, or goat, or whatever it is being able to find them and create this opportunity to get a stock, just giving yourself a chance at success. And so much of these hunts, it can be 5 days of backpacking where you don't see an animal, but continuing to theorize and put effort in and trying to come up with where the elk are, why they're acting different, or why you haven't found them in those drainages, or even just moving and exploring a different drainages that you have scouting in, and then all of a sudden you find them, and then you create this opportunity and you make it happen with your skill set and put an arrow in them. But the ability to adapt is so crucial to success.
100%. I mean, you nailed it. That's ultimately me and my brother, and we've talked about this before too. Maybe it's a personality thing, but you have more of an analytical mind, like my brother, very engineered, very, this is an equation and this is the equation, and A squared plus B squared has to equal C squared. And with hunting, it's rarely like that. So if you have more of an analytical mind and you know it, then challenge yourself in life, or get yourself outside of your comfort zone, and and just put yourself in situations where you have to think a little bit more on your feet. You have to, make yourself do this. This will make you a better hunter. I'm convinced. If your life is very structured and very this and this and this and this, that's going to be detrimental to your hunting skill set. And so, don't be afraid to be more open to just fly by the seat of your pants sometimes. Mm-hmm. Because I tell you what, I'm more, that's what I would say. I'm more of like an artistic person and a fly by the seat of my pants a little bit.
Me too.
But we're calculated too, that you have to have some calculated. So the point is you have to be a little bit analytical, and you have to be a little bit fly by the seat of your pants. And I think meshing those two together is what really sets you to the next level of being a really good hunter.
That's good insight. And creative thinking is rewarded. Like, these animals are tough to get an arrow in. And you may find a trophy buck or a trophy bull, and you may hunt them day after day, and you just can't solve the puzzle of getting an arrow in them. But this creative thinking, like being able to get creative, like there was a buck I arrowed in Nevada one time where I kept trying to do this classic mule deer stalk where I would bed him in the morning, let him bed in his afternoon bed, and then I try to come above him and try to come down on him, make a play. I've killed so many mule deer doing that. But where this buck was living, he was on the lee wind side, and so the wind would just swirl over the top. And so, here I'd be planning and strategizing for 2 days. I'd get a chance at him, and then I'd bust him. The wind would swirl over there, and it seemed good moving in. And so, like, I had to get this creative thinking of like, no, okay, I've got to come up with another solution to this problem, because this isn't working on the 2 stalks that I've had or the 3 stalks that I've had. And so I finally ended up bedding them first thing in the morning and coming down below and approaching them with a downhill thermal. And now I've solved the puzzle of this wind, and I'm able to get in range of this buck. And so, like, this creative thinking and problem solving is so crucial to success, at just being able to look at an issue or realizing that it's not working the way I'm trying to get into these elk, that I need to come up with something different. Maybe I need to beat them to their bed in the morning, or, I can't be chasing behind them, or maybe I need to wait for an afternoon or an evening hunt when the thermals are coming down and I know I got a good wind and they're coming out into the meadow feeding. I'm going to give myself a better chance at success there. And so it is like you're constantly problem solving and working in your brain at trying to solve these solutions, whether it's locating game or getting in range of them. But creative thinking is also so crucial to success.
Absolutely. And I think to kind of wrap that all up, that's why I love it so much. And I'm a man. I like to fix things. If there's a problem, I like to fix it. But you got to be able to think on your feet too, and just be creative. And ultimately, in bow hunting, I think that's the appeal to me, is confronting a problem, or it's a chess match, but ultimately I'm end up being more savvy than my prey if I'm successful. And sometimes my prey is more savvy than me, and it just gives me all that desire to come back for more and do it again. And that's the appeal to it, to me.
That is.
Yeah.
That's the magic of it.
It's
the appeal to me too. It's like you just continually keep learning and getting better, and that problem solving. And it's not black and white a lot of times. It's gray, and it's great to try to figure out how you're going to approach that animal or how you're going to find that animal. But that's the beauty of it. And man, we're leading into season now, which is so exciting. So a couple months left to kind of get our stuff ready and figure out how our season shapes up. But what fun conversation as always, Dan, man. It's the best.
Heck yeah. It's awesome. You never know where these conversations are going to go, but that's the fun of it. And I think, hopefully our viewers or listeners can really take something away from it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And viewers film today, which
both,
would be good.
Yeah,
for sure. All right. Thanks, buddy.
You bet.